Hello.
Hello, Michelle, and hello there, cat people. It's Dan the Cat Man, and whatever you want to call yourself.
I've been trying to think of a clever little cat moniker for myself. We'll get there. We'll come up with something.
It will hit you for sure. Welcome to episode 35 of the Shelter Cats podcast, and this is an amazing guest that we have on today. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, she has certainly a lot to offer, a lot of experience, a tremendous amount of knowledge. Really very kind and very generous with everything, really.
Absolutely. So today, before I do our preamble, today's guest is Stacey LeBaron, and she is the founder and host of another cat podcast called the Community Cats Podcast. And her episodes are on every Tuesday and ours are on every Sunday. So I think it's a wonderful compliment. And she's been doing this 500 more episodes than we have. So obviously I wanted to meet her and see if she wanted to be on the show. And one thing led to another. And we were able to, in very short order, in a matter of a few days, get her on the show. So that's really cool. Go us that we got her on the show. Because she not only does a podcast in kind of a similar vein where she interviews people and raises awareness about shelter cats. She has been on many organizations. She's been involved in many organizations that do TNR. She's a huge TNR, trap, neuter, return advocate, and her website. Unlike ours, our website is coming soon, sheltercatspodcast.com. Her website, she offers online TNR certification programs.
Yes, as well as various other seminars and informational programs. So
she's when I say I think she complements our show is more lighthearted and kind of maybe a little comedic. She you're laughing. She does just amazing work. I had to have her on. I had to have give us an opportunity to just pick her brain a little bit. So very excited about that. But that doesn't mean we don't want to speak to you, right, Michelle? We want to interview everybody.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of space, plenty of room for everybody, and lots to learn. Lots to be discussed, and yep.
Yeah, this is our labor of feline love. It's literally, like I say all the time, we want to give a voice to everybody that has bettered the lives of shelter cats and homeless cats in any possible way. From you have an amazing cat to you do rescue to you're a foster. If you work with your rescue wherever you live and you just foster cats, we want to talk to you. If you're a director of a large shelter, a small shelter, a rescue without a building, your cats are in a local pet store, whatever. We want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and give a voice and talk about you, how you got involved, and express your challenges, because it's not easy to do what you do. So we want to give you a chance to take a half hour and chat with us cat people. So our website right now is tylerthecat.com, but it is changing thanks to our wonderful friend Ralph to sheltercatspodcast.com. And you can email me at dan@sheltercatspodcast.com. Michelle is michelle@sheltercatspodcast.com.
That's right.
And we have info@sheltercatspodcast.com. And we are on all the socials. So Facebook, the page is Shelter Cats. Twitter, Shelter Cats POD. Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. Does anybody use Threads? It's Shelter Cats Podcast. Just search those. And we have a YouTube, also called just Shelter Cats or Shelter Cats Podcast. And we do audio of YouTube. Just the audio with a still image. If you like YouTube, I listen to them on YouTube. I don't know. I'm a YouTube addict. I don't know about you, Michelle.
I'm not. I'm getting there, but I'm not really on YouTube as much as I know many other people are. Yeah.
Last week's episode, which was maybe somewhat less about cats. More people were listening on YouTube and Spotify than anywhere else. So you never know.
Yeah,
But,
you never know.
Like Stacy was mentioning, on YouTube you can get captions. You can get the closed captions of the episode. So if you could always read along if you prefer that, or need it or anything like that. So Stacey LeBaron is the founder and host of Community Cats podcast, and she's been involved in many organizations. She does a lot of work in raising awareness for trap, neuter, return, and we had the opportunity to interview her. So anything you want to say, Michelle?
No, it was a pleasure to have the conversation with her, and just, as I said, just a wealth of knowledge, and the amount of experience and the amount of work that she's done in the field. It's incredible. For 30 years she's been doing this, from mobile spay and neuter systems to fundraising, to humane society work, to Massachusetts. It's everything from Massachusetts to Vermont to, she's just so much stuff that she's done. She's been president, treasurer, founder of so many different foundations over the years that just, it's pretty impressive, the amount of work that she's done to change the way that the public and, just individuals just see and help and work with cats, and just, better the lives of cats and the people around them.
Absolutely. All the people a lot of the people we've had on this show, they're in the weeds all the time. They're fielding all these phone calls, and they're overwhelmed, and they're always strapped for cash. So it's nice I'm a big picture person. It's nice to have a resource like that where you could take these online certification programs. You could just reach out to her. And even if you're already certified and you're just overwhelmed, she's just such a resource. She even consults with rescues. So if you're just a rescue and you don't know where to go, or you're overwhelmed, or you're yelling at people on your Facebook page and they're not helping you, they're not donating enough, or they're not fostering enough, reach out to her, because she's working on so many initiatives that I think can possibly help make things better. So. Yeah. Without further ado, here is our conversation with Stacey LeBaron of the Community Cats podcast. Thank you.
Hello, how are you?
How are you? You're on with Michelle and I, and we are the co-hosts of a smaller version of your show, Shelter Cats podcast.
Hi, Stacy. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome from your undisclosed location on the planet Earth. So we became aware of your podcast because people connect with our show a lot on TikTok, and I was speaking to somebody about being a future guest, and they had mentioned that they had done a show with you, and all of a sudden, just between that and reading the bio that you so graciously sent us, you are laser focused on doing everything you can to help homeless cats and making lives better for cats, and highlighting people that do the same thing. And that's kind of what we're doing, but we're only 40 episodes in, and you're 540 episodes in. So we're here to learn.
Yeah. No. It's I love the fact that there's so many more podcasts coming out and about. It's wonderful about animals in general, but especially I have a very special place in my heart for cats, for sure.
Yeah.
And this is I've learned, I still don't know what I'm doing, but it's a great medium for people to on the go, because I'm sure all the rescues are so busy, and it's a constant 24/7. And I've been told that they can listen to this in the car or while they're out and about is it's a great medium. So with that comedy out of the way, can can you introduce yourself to our audience is very east coast of the United States based,
Yep. Sure.
particularly New York. So can you introduce yourself and try to boil down everything you do, which blew us away?
Yeah, sure. Happy to introduce myself and just share a little bit about my background. So, I first started out in animal welfare back in 1994, bringing a bag of cat litter and cat food into a brand new shelter that had formed in my hometown in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And I walked up into the shelter thinking, oh my gosh, this 15-pound bag of cat food's going to last them a month. And my little container of cat litter, it's going to just, it'll take care of every cat in the world. And I went in there and they had just taken in 80 cats from a hoarding situation.
Wow.
And I was like, oh dear, there's, something different in this picture of what I thought the world was like for cats versus what it really is like. And the two folks that were there that were tending to the cats were so appreciative of my meager donation, which I was actually almost embarrassed that I would brought it into them. And they were just lovely, wonderful folks, overworked, overstressed, and they took the time to be very thankful. And so, with that being said, that was like the first step. I donated some money to that group. I joined their board of directors. And by 1996, I was president of the organization because I really honestly felt that there were so many things that I was seeing in the cat space that really just did not need to happen. We did not need to see kittens living in dumpsters. We did not need to see 300 cats living on the Newburyport waterfront out of 14 feeding stations. And I mean, it was wonderful. We provided some incredible support with the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. That was really my graduate school. That was my undergraduate of learning how to handle cat overpopulation. We had 300 cats on the waterfront and 14 feeding stations. We got the cats what's called trapped, neuter, and returned. Kittens were brought in. They were able to be adopted out. We had a foster home program, and then they had started this new shelter basically when I entered the group in 1994. I can fast forward to the happy ending, which was, we had volunteers doting over these cats twice a day at their feeding stations. Some of the feeding stations, as the cats got older and more arthritic, they got heated, solar panel heated, and,
Wow.
really cared for in a very special way. And the last cat passed away in 2008. So if anybody
Oh,
tells
wow.
you that trap, neuter, return does not work, trap, neuter, and return of cats in a managed way, which it's community engagement, really makes sense, and it does work. And so from that, I developed an interest in, where did these cats come from? Where do they originate from? I was like, why can we prevent these colonies from even starting? And so the thought of Adam and Eve came to my mind. How does this all start? Somebody owns Eve and someone owns Adam. Those two cats, they can't afford to get them spayed or neutered. They start spraying. They start going into heat. They go outside. People have to move. They can't take the cats with them. And therefore a colony starts. Anyway, so my second aha moment in this whole cycle was, how do we make sure Adam and Eve get spayed and neutered and hopefully won't have a situation where they're outside and having kittens and that kind of thing. So I started a Catmobile, mobile spay neuter clinics, a Catmobile, which offers low cost spay neuter services for cats all across Eastern Massachusetts. This is where I started, in Eastern Massachusetts, and doing targeted spay neuter programs in the communities that really needed that assistance the most to reduce cat intakes in the area shelters. And it worked great. Honestly, getting spay neuter to those communities through the mobile spay neuter clinics, other organizations in the state banded together. They created spay neuter programs. It's really magical
Wow.
when you have that access to care. So we fast forward even more to that period of time. And I, about 10 years ago, sort of retired from the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. I had run a mentoring program where I had assisted 80 groups in starting a trap neuter return program, but I had 400 groups on my waiting list.
Oh my God. Wow.
And one thing that was so important to me back then was we never let a call go unanswered. we really tried at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society to always reach out, even if it was like, let me see if I can find someone else to help,
Yeah.
was to reach and listen and to hear people. And so I am so passionate about trap, neuter, return, but I'm almost even more passionate of spay neuter, on a national
Yeah.
level, on a worldwide level, being able to have affordable, accessible, efficient spay neuter for cats. If we could just get everybody spayed and neutered, 4 paws on the ground, get those cats spayed or neutered, our world would be a totally different place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so true. It's so true. And it's pet care is often one of those things that, if you're in a financial situation, unfortunately, that's one of the first things to go. Like you take care of your own health, your children's health, your home, and to be able to take care of your pets and get them spayed or neutered in that way can be expensive. And if you just don't have the money, if it's a choice between putting food on the table or spaying your cat, you're going to put food on the table.
Right.
So to have a service like that that's out there that helps people in those situations, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and one of our goals with regards to pricing is that we look at sort of your retail pricing and
Yeah.
try to create a model that's sustainable. So it's more like 50% of what retail would be. So if
Right.
we're talking East Coast, most communities, we're talking, potentially 400 plus
Yeah.
for a spay of a cat. And so what I would deem an affordable pricing model in that arena would be about $200 per cat, which still is a lot of
Yeah.
money. But then there are services like scratch pay or care credit. People can utilize that. And I'm not
Right.
advocating we all go into debt. And then there are also opportunities, grant opportunities, where if there are people who really, really can't afford it, as your income level goes down, the number of cats you have go up statistically. So there are times where if you've
Yeah.
got 10 cats, you're not going to be able to afford $200, right? 10
That's right.
cats in your backyard, you're just trying to do the best you can, provide some shelter, give them some food. No way you're going to afford getting those guys spayed and neutered. So that's where you need to really come in with the full subsidy program, trap those cats, get them spayed and neutered, get them ear tipped. I'll tell you, probably 50% of those cats are going to get adopted once they get
Yeah.
spayed, neutered, ear tipped, because then people know there's an investment made in those cats and the health and
That's right.
well-being of those cats, and it's going to elevate the status of those cats. I've certainly adopted many cats that were in my backyard, that's for sure.
Now, Stacey, do you know? I mean, maybe this is a silly question, but a lot of people, the advent of pet health insurance has, it's become very popular in the last couple of years. Is that something that people could get that would help them cover costs as well for like a spay and neuter situation?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've interviewed a couple of folks about pet health insurance, and there's a variety of different companies out there that
Right.
do offer pet health insurance. I'm going to recommend if anybody's looking at pet insurance, ask, does it cover for spay neuter? Because many of them don't.
Oh,
So
Right.
please ask the question. And I've asked, well, why? Why would this happen? And they say, well, so many organizations, I mean, so many people when they adopt, they're already adopting from the shelters, and the shelters spay neuter before adoption, and so they're coming already spayed or neutered. That's
Right.
not the case anymore with the veterinary shortage that we are feeling now
yeah.
across the country. Many organizations are adopting out intact animals because they don't have the capacity to do the spay neuter services that they desperately should be doing, but they are not finding that they have the capacity to be able to do it. And so there were, as of a couple years ago, maybe 2 organizations I knew of that covered for spay neuter with regards to the insurance. And then I'm hoping that's increased because it's really out of reach for a lot of people pricing
Yeah.
wise. But if you do the pet insurance route, please ask first if they cover the spay neuter.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
it seems logical that, I understand possibly why they wouldn't, but it seems like they should, the whole ounce of prevention,
Right.
mantra. You would think that that would be, in the long run, a money savings for everybody.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm on the board of directors for the United Spay Alliance, and we have a national directory for low cost spay neuter services all across the country that folks can check out and find resources there,
Yeah.
as well as We also are strong promoters of Feline Fix by 5, which is if every veterinarian all across the country just would drop the age limit down to 5 months versus 6 months as the appropriate time to get
Hmm.
your kitty spayed, you would
Right.
be preventing a huge amount of unpredicted litters out there. So we really try to promote Feline Fix by 5. It's not going to change the world,
Right.
but it will change the world in terms of these cats having a window of opportunity for them to get pregnant. So we're trying to think creatively and efficiently because resources are extremely limited with the shortage of the veterinarians and technicians that are out there right now.
Right. Right.
So you work with you your programs are for rescues and owners alike, which I think is amazing because unfortunately where I live in Nassau County of Long Island, the town of Hempstead Animal Shelter offers a free TNR program where they'll fix if the cat is trapped and is a feral cat on within this part of Long Island, they will fix and return.
Yep.
But I've interviewed a volunteer at Flatbush Cats in Brooklyn, where they don't have that. And you said 200. They offer They just opened a low cost clinic in Flatbush, Brooklyn, which has a epidemic of homeless cats. They're on YouTube. I'm sure you've seen their
Yep.
YouTubes.
Yep.
They do amazing things, and I just kept after them until I got one of their volunteers, and that's pretty much their magic number. Where a regular, it's between $400 and $800 in this part of the world to fix one cat. I've had a colony in my backyard, and I just called my vet before I got into animal rescue about 6 years ago, just like a naive dummy, and they said, "Oh, $825 to
Oh,
fix one cat," and
Yep.
my jaw dropped. So this is
yeah.
such a vital thing that you do. So you're fast forwarding. I'm going to fast forward a little too. How did at what point did you decide that podcast would also be a great idea?
Yeah. So when I ran this mentoring program, I did it with the support of PetSmart Charities, with the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, and Brian Cordes, who's now back with Neighborhood Cats. Um, he supported me in doing this mentoring program for trap neuter return groups. And again, I said I worked with 80 groups and I had 400 on my wait list. And I really felt like I left them behind. And so I decided to do this podcast. And it was funny because my son at the time was about 12 or 13 years old, and he was just learning to play the electric guitar. And
Oh,
we were doing a lot of driving in those days back and forth. We were commuting between Massachusetts and Vermont. So we'd listen to podcasts in the car and stuff. And he's like, you know what, Mom, you really should do a podcast. Cause I was lamenting. I was saying, oh, I feel like I'm terrible. I'm leaving this organization. I'm leaving all these groups behind. But, here I am, talking to my son like he's my therapist. And he comes out and he goes, Mom, it's so easy to do a podcast. Why don't you just do a podcast and share information about what you've learned over all the years? And I had a colleague from the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society who had also mentioned, we really need a podcast. We need to have a podcast. And so I started out with him. He set me up with a microphone. He set me up with the software and all that stuff. And then I contacted my partner, technical tabby, Kristen Petrie, who got involved with this project back in 2016. And so she hopped on board. She was like, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm in." So she's designed all the logos and she does the website and all that kind of stuff. And we started with there. And I mean, I had a great list of people. I thought, oh, I'll just do like 30 of these. My Rolodex, I'll run out of people to talk to at about 30 and I'll be done. But, then it'll be a resource. My image of, who is listening were these folks, these groups that I wanted to help, but I also wanted to help the individual trapper. Always have this image of people saying, this is a very lonely business we're in. And I'm the only one who cares about these cats. Nobody else will do what I will do. There's a lot of that type of sort of negative energy and talk. And you know what? if someone's sitting out there in the middle of the night trying to trap that last cat with their drop trap, I picture them with a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and they're just like, go in there, go in there. I'm all alone. I want to be that voice that they're listening to, in the middle of the night while they're, trapping and getting that last cat, because I'm on their team. I'm with them. And so that's how the podcast has really grown, because I really do feel like I have an obligation to these folks that might feel like they're alone and they're not working with others. And they just need to know that there's somebody out there supporting them and willing, and I'm willing to listen to the different challenges that are out there. You talked about Brooklyn, Bronx, boy, they've got a lot going on. I just recently released an episode about a group in Bronx and challenges there. And I've also talked to some folks in Queens. I mean, just the lack of resources for spay neuter in the greater New York area is really shocking, to be honest. It's just very scary. Your area in Long Island, there's an incredible network of trap, neuter, return volunteers and folks along in your area. You're sort of in a blessed territory. There's also quite a few veterinarians that I know in that region that do high volume, high quality spay neuter.
Yes.
And so that is great. But the New York City, with the loss of some strategic spay neuter opportunities, they've just through the pandemic, it's just been very hurtful. And what do you do? I mean, somebody called me up, they asked me, well, what do we do if we can't get access to spay neuter services for our colonies? How can we help them? And I'm like, if you can't get that spay neuter done, I mean, how do you stop the insanity of the overpopulation? You have to create new spay neuter opportunities. And so that's where we try to get creative and think about MASH style clinics, that maybe you're using a clinic on a Sunday and you're using volunteers, trying to just really think outside the box, which is what we did in the 90s. We did not have high volume spay neuter clinics, affordable spay neuter clinics. We were trapping cats and using private practice clinics on Sundays and getting, volunteers to trudge the totes with the equipment in and do the surgeries on Sundays, just because it was what we could do. I digress, but I also say, the podcast is there to think about what's your environment like, what's your situation like, and let's brainstorm ideas on how we can make life better for yourself as well as for the cats in your community. And that's what the podcast is all about, just showing different ideas. We started out at 5 days a week, and now we're down to 1 day a week.
I think the more voices that bring light to this, I think the better. Well, I've only started this basically almost a year ago, last spring, and your most recent episode with John Lynn and Megan from New York Cat Rescue and Puppy Kitty, I had them on in July, and they went off on the whole plight in New York, and I just stepped back, and the pain and the stress and the you said we live in New York City. You'd think it's New York City. You'd think they'd have this figured out. And if anything, New York has it figured out the least. And the pain and the stress in their voices. Yeah. I'm an amateur just trying to figure out how to jump back in and reel them back. Like, I understand, I get it, I respect it, and I'm glad that you and I as podcast hosts can provide voices to this, because I don't think people understand. I think education of this plight is I'm finding is the biggest challenge with these rescues. You'll see somebody on Instagram, oh, look at the bodega cat. The bodega cat is so cute. But John Lynn and Megan, do you understand what that cat is dealing with right now? You think that cat is cute, but that cat is fighting for its life.
Yep.
So it's wonderful that you're out there. It's wonderful that you've done so much. I'm just, I feed colonies and I work with a lot of the Long Island rescues because of my proximity. It's great that there are a growing number of resources like this.
Yeah, and many of the folks on Long Island have taken part in our trap, neuter, return, TNR certification workshops that we do on a monthly basis at the Community Cats podcast. And so that's basically a session where if there's somebody who is totally brand new to what TNR is all about. They want to just help some cats in their backyard. That's really the starting point. It's like, it's really trap, neuter, turn 101. And we just had a session yesterday. 83% of the people who attended the session yesterday had never trapped a cat, and they're 100% beginners, and it was the first time that they'd ever attended like a cat webinar at all.
That's
And
great.
and so that's what we want, is this is done by the many, not by the few. And that's what we're all about too, is empowering everybody to turn their passion for cats into action. And so every person counts, everyone is important. I respond to every email that comes my way, every phone call, because every person, is a gold star in my mind because of the love and care that they want to offer to the cats in their community.
So the certification program that you offer that through your website online, and at the end of that, you become certified to do TNR. Am I correct?
Yeah. So we have we do it usually the first Saturday of every month, and it's a 2.5-hour session. They can attend it live. They can also sign up for it and get the recordings. They do take a test after the session is over. They have a week to take the test, and they get a certificate. And then there are some locations in the New York area that require TNR certification in order to be able to make appointments. And there are some
Yes.
clinics that don't. But really, the veterinary clinics, they do not want to get a feral cat in a cat carrier. And they want to make sure that people know what they're doing when they're trapping the cats and how to take care of them in the trap without getting their hand bitten and all that kind of stuff. So we do these on a monthly basis. We also do a surrender prevention certification, and that is more for feline behavior issues. So if you're working in a shelter and you're on the front lines and this person's like, I've got to get rid of my cat, it's not using the litter box. There is baseline feline behavior counseling you can do that will help triage to prevent those cats ending up in the shelter. And then we're doing a return to home certification program by folks at the MSPCA in Boston. They have a return to home rate or return to owner rate of over 30% for cats from the shelter, which is extremely high. It's really about 3 to 5% nationally. If a stray
Wow.
is brought in, that it gets returned to its owner. The MSPCA has that over 30%, and they have a fantastic program. And I just think it should be the standard practice all across the country, because if you're 30% of your stray cats don't have to come in and be in a shelter environment and have to go through that process. And, there's a very worried home out there that wants their pet back. It's going to be great. I just can't wait for this tidal wave to go over the country, because every slot that we can prevent from being filled by a cat in a shelter prevents disease. It prevents crowding. It prevents just so much that it's going to be a huge benefit, I think.
That's
And
quite a staggering difference from 3 to 5% to 30%. What is it that they're doing different there that the rest of the country isn't doing?
Yeah, so their general process in the Crib Notes version, they do a lot more sleuthing, individual sleuthing. So with the microchip, so if any of the cats do have microchips, even if it's not a registered microchip, there are ways to still find out how that chip is connected to a person. And they also are very active in the Facebook realms on the Lost and Found Facebook pages for various communities. They've been very active to create by town in Massachusetts, lost and found pages that are very active. And so those are great resources, utilizing their volunteer core, making sure that it's posted in a lot of different locations, and working, boots on the ground locally when we're in the area where the cat was picked up, to ensure that, that cat's just not been missing. We
Right.
also, in Massachusetts, I will say, and this is before the cat even comes in as a stray, as a general practice in Massachusetts, if somebody feels like they've got a friendly cat that's new to their colony or that's in their backyard, and that they feel that the cat, may not have an owner, if it's possible, we require in Massachusetts a paper collar to go on that cat for approximately 2 weeks. If they rip the collar off, you can put another one on. We have a paper collar template link on our website. You can just download the template, but you can print it out, put your phone number on there. Does anybody own me? And I honestly, in the situation where I've recommended a paper collar being used, all of those cats, owners have been found through the
Oh,
paper collar.
What a
So
what a
so that's
brilliant
interesting. I've
idea.
never heard of that before.
yeah, it's simple, it's cheap, and it's funny because nobody else does it. But in Massachusetts, many years ago, we kind of we have a group called Mass Cats, which puts the large organizations together as well as the individual cat rescuers together and TNR folks, and we kind of made a pact basically saying like this would be part of our process to ensure that we weren't going to be stealing anybody's cat.
Yeah, because that's always a question too, right? Like I have a few cats that just live in my neighborhood, but there's a house that's down the street from me that has a lot of just outside cats, and the cats just live in their front lawn. Every
Yeah.
once in a while, one of them traipses up to my house, and I see them on and I say hi. They don't usually come over to me; they're a little skittish, but I've seen them. Like they're familiar cats to me, so I know who they are. I know where they live.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't seen them before, that's interesting to differentiate between, oh, this is truly a stray that just is, who knows where they came from, as opposed to somebody that lives down the street. That's interesting. It really does sound like such a simple solution to to a
Right. Right.
situation.
Are you listening, New York City? Let's improve.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I mean, certainly you'll find out too, like in some of the cases when the phone number and the paper collar was put on that cat, there were like 3 people who called up and said, "Yeah, that's my cat." Right.
Prove it. Prove it. Let me see a picture.
Yeah. So,
So
well, it's something like 60% of people say they feed cats that they don't know who the owners are.
Yeah. Yeah.
my most recent resident in my home was a cat that I was feeding for 3 years, and I was finally able to track. Well, she had come with an ear tip, so she had previously been TNR'd, but she was someone's cat because she was always very friendly, and she lived in a box in my yard that was weatherproof. And finally, through no fault of her own, she got a chicken bone stuck in her mouth, and
Mm.
finally let me trap her and get her treated, and now she's living in my bedroom. So there are many, but just the whole, you could print a collar at home. It never occurred to me. What a brilliant idea. So that being said, the question I always ask, because I want to know, is you've been at this literally 30 years, and from the people we've interviewed, the biggest challenges are awareness, education, and obviously funding. And those go hand in hand, not necessarily in that order. From when you started, when you brought that litter that you thought would last a year, but probably lasted about an hour, to the present day, 541 episodes in. Um, have you seen a difference in? Because it's a very big picture. Having a
Mm.
podcast, interviewing people all over the world, is a very big picture thing to do, is what I'm finding. Have you noticed a difference, a change in not only the plight of homeless cats and the plight of TNR? Have you noticed a difference in how people perceive it, how people handle it? Is there anything you could comment on that in terms of 1994 to 2024?
Oh, sure, definitely. So one thing that I've noticed tremendously is what I call the normalization of TNR.
Mm.
And it if you go on the Facebook groups and somebody's going, "I've got cats in my backyard and I just want to get rid of them, and they should be euthanized," or that kind of thing, the world goes crazy. And people are going, "No, no, no, you have to do TNR. And if you just remove them, there's the vacuum effect. Other cats are just going to move in." I mean, the knowledge of our population around what trap neuter return is, what it means, and what the implications are just fascinating. It blows my mind when somebody comes out and asks what I think would be a pretty obvious question. Like thinking back to my 1994 self, when I didn't know anything, I would think, oh, yeah, we trap those cats, you remove them because there's nobody owning them. And so some folks have that same question, but the education around trap, neuter, return, and the advocacy for that as a solution is out there much, much more. And there certainly are parts of the country, black hole areas, where TNR is not allowed. And that's where I think that you need substantial spay neuter for owned cats. You're talking about those resources, the challenges. Honestly, education and awareness, in my opinion, are lower on the totem pole than access to care, access to spay neuter services, and affordable access to spay neuter services,
Yes.
especially in your what I call your magnificent seven communities in each state region, your poorest communities, lowest income communities across your state. Tag them as your magnificent seven, make spay neuter free for cats in those communities. Your world will change dramatically. Massachusetts, we are in essence what you call a no-kill state, which I know a lot of people don't like that language, but really there's a lot of transport that goes up into Massachusetts, the spaying and neutering of cats. Uh, Most cats that come in now that are trapped are socialized cats rather than TNR cats, just because we've done the TNR. Those feral cats have aged out, and now we're monitoring so actively that there's a lot less of the R, meaning the return, happening. So approximately 60% of the cats that are trapped in Massachusetts are coming into an adoption pathway versus being returned back out there. And there are some parts where it's up to 90% of those cats are coming in for the adoption pathway. And that's not
Wow.
high volume. It's not high volume. It's just that we're now in this maintenance mode. We're out there and we're just watching for the cats that weren't able to find an opportunity and for some reason were abandoned. And those resources are there for cats to help prevent them from getting into trouble. So the world has changed incredibly dramatically over the last 30 years for me. The loss of the spay neuter, half the low cost spay neuter clinics across the country went out of business over the last 3 years during COVID.
Right.
And we lost incredible spay neuter capacity. And like we're talking millions of spay neuter appointments were
Wow.
lost.
Wow.
And that has created incredible pressures within many communities that don't want to have to euthanize due to space constraints. So they're only taking in injured cats. They're doing return to field, which is basically if you have a healthy cat, comes in, you get it spayed and neutered, you ear tip it, you put it back. You don't ask the question, is this a friendly cat? You don't ask a lot of questions. If it looks
Right.
healthy, you just spay, neuter, and put it back. I understand that's an appropriate action maybe in some areas, but then it's not an appropriate action in Massachusetts where I am or where I was living, because the trap neuter return there's usually capacity anywhere that in any shelter at any given time. So there's a few more questions you have to ask. There's a great group, Indie Neighborhood Cats, and they've got some great resources on how to determine whether a cat is a abandoned house cat versus a feral cat or a community cat that needs to stay out. And a lot of it has to do with like looking at their paws.
Mm.
So when you've got them trapped and they're in for spay neuter, you can look and see how calloused their paws are as a sign of whether they've had a history of being indoors versus outdoors a lot of the time.
Right.
So little tips like that. Anyway, so it's very different now, but we've stepped back. We've fallen behind over the last several years. And so in terms of resources, veterinary shortage, staffing at all levels. I think staffing is actually a bigger issue than even funding. I think the funding can be found. I think staffing is our problem, and I've got some legislative issues too, like vet reciprocity. So you're looking, say you've got a vet licensed in New York that can do spay neuters. They can't go over to Jersey and do a high volume spay neuter clinic without being licensed in that state, which is, a $600 to $800 administrative process and a financial process and all that. And that's just, to me, that's just silly. If you're a high volume, high quality spay neuter vet, you should pretty much be able to go wherever you need to go and just get those surgeries done.
Yeah, agreed.
So do you perceive a rough road ahead, given what you just said of the past few years of all the closures and lack of staffing? I'm 50. If I could get 25 years back, I would go into being a vet without a doubt. Do you perceive rough years ahead?
Well, so there's a program called Lincoln Memorial, and I actually think they may be opening up a veterinary school on Long Island, maybe. And then, so there's like 10 veterinary schools that are sort of in the pipeline to open within the next year or so, which is really helpful, because there's really a significant shortage of veterinary schools out there. So that's going to help us. It's obviously that's going to take some time. I am cautiously optimistic for cats, because with cats, doing a neuter is relatively easy, quick if you know the process. You can do a spay in 3 minutes. So as long as those practices are put in place in the private practice as well as in the nonprofit clinics, if that becomes a standard best practice, then the private practice clinics can get back into the business of doing spays and neuters. Right now, some of the low-cost clinics are getting people who could really afford the higher prices just because it's accessible. And, many private practice vets are not taking new clients, or they're not taking appointments 4 months out, that kind of thing. So they're using the low-cost clinics if they don't do income verification, and then that's clogging the pipeline up too. Right. So we're trying to really encourage the private practice veterinarians to partner up with the nonprofits or the low-cost clinics to work together to provide a unified solution for cats. Large dogs, potentially a different issue. There are some other issues with regards to them, and I think they're the last ones on the list that anyone wants to deal with regards to population issues. I think there's some big challenges there for them. I've become a partner of a group called the Community Cat Clinic down in Woodstock, Georgia, which is, I'm hoping, going to be a new model for how we are able to combat the cat overpopulation problem and really be able to elevate the status of cats in the community. Because private practice veterinarians, 75% of their revenues come from dogs. They don't really have a lot of their revenues for cats. And so this is a clinic that is structured only around cats, but it's all cats. So it's not a boutique feline practice. It's a 15 technician, 3 veterinarian practice that does everything from high volume, high quality spay neuter, TNR, owned spay neuter, all the way through to ultrasound, full mouth dentals, also the radiotherapy for the thyroid and all that kind of stuff too. So we're really hoping that'll be a model to show what are the services that cats really need, which are different than dogs. So we start with the base of, this is for cats. We're not thinking these are little dogs. We're thinking that these are cats. This is what cats need. We need a clinic that's going to really work on population, because cats can really, have a lot of kittens in a short period of time. So that's why we need to front load those spays and neuters and really make sure people can get access to a spay neuter sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Stacy, I could ask you 50,000 more questions, and this podcast could go on for another 4 hours. I'm as much as it pains me, I have to stop somewhere. But just an absolute wealth of information. I'm so glad I have a TikTok and learned of your show. And one thing led to another, and now we're having this great conversation. How do people find you, or how do people find your show? And how do people find these certification programs? Because anybody from anywhere could do this, right? It's not limited to Massachusetts. Nope. I could do that if I wanted to on Long Island. Yep. So how do people find these programs?
Yeah, we have folks from Europe, South America, Australia, all around the country doing our certification workshops and attending our events. So Our website is communitycatspodcast.com. That's www.communitycatspodcast.com. My email address is Stacy, Stacy, at communitycatspodcast.com. You can find us at Cats Podcast on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, and we do have a Community Cats Podcast page on LinkedIn also. So we're all around on social. We do have at the end of January, we have an online cat conference. June, we have an online kitten conference. And then in October, we have a United Spay Alliance conference. We have Behavior Day, online Behavior Day with Pam Johnson Bennett, Tabitha Kucera, Rachel Geller, and Arden Moore. That's in April. And we also have Feline Leukemia Day for those who are interested in finding out more about feline leukemia. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our surrender prevention certification workshop, return to home surrender certification workshop, as well as our TNR. So it's 30 plus virtual events during the course of the year. And then we have our podcast, which comes out every Tuesday. And please, please follow the podcast by going to Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. We have a YouTube channel, which also has an TNR, everything TNR playlist, along with all of our shows are there too. So if you prefer YouTube, that's easy. And that gets you, it's also closed captioned. So you can get closed captioning if you want there, and it translates into Spanish if language is an issue. So we're pretty much everywhere. If we're not TikTok, we have not gotten there yet, but everywhere else we are there. And again, even if it's the most like I just don't even know where to start, you can feel free to start with us, because just by wanting to help, that's what it was. All I wanted to do was just give a little food. And there was.
That's wonderful. Stacy?
Yep.
Thank you so much for we're every Sunday, you're every Tuesday. I think we complement each other very well. Together our podcasts will conquer this problem eventually. Again, New York, if you're listening, please reach out to Stacy or go on communitycatspodcast.com, because she has some ideas to make things better for sure. Stacy, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll definitely have you on again after another 500 episodes to see how things are.
Yes. Thank you, Stacey. This has been wonderful. It's been very enlightening. There's so much info. I'm newer to this than even Dan is, so I have so much to learn about all of this, podcasting and cat rescue, everything. So it's very informative. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you both. I appreciate it very, very much.
Great. And just thank you for all you do, and keep up the fight. And thanks for being on the show.
Take care.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks.